Revolution Radio proudly presents live from Phoenix, Arizona, the Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here for topics you won't hear about on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, nutrition, and conspiracy facts regarding your personal sovereignty.
And a very good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be a fabulous show. I know a lot of you are very interested to hear Michael Lee Hill's story as well. I am loving being able to hear the account from himself as opposed to a lot of stuff that I've read about him. And so this will be great. Anyone in the chat room, welcome to the show, by the way, chat room. And if you have questions, let's just give it the first hour if we can. And second hour, go ahead and post those questions into the chat room. And our lovely producer, Thomas, will pick up those questions for our guests this evening. One quick thing before we get on. I want to thank so many of you for your participation in some great healing that has been happening. As you well know, I'm not going to get into it. I don't want to take up time on this show this evening, but we've been in crisis mode over here on just so many levels. I can't even begin to tell you the story or the stories. But I will say this, coming from all levels, spiritual levels, just normal, everyday work, our animals, our whole life has been a big roller coaster for the past 4 months and really crescendoed a couple of days ago. And it's just been an enormous lesson. So I want to thank all of you who participated in prayer groups. I didn't even have to tell you what was going on. We just asked for help. And your help was received. We are always willing. And let me tell you, I really want to get this point across. So if you can just listen very carefully for just a moment. There are people on this planet right now who are the frontline individuals, like my guest, having experiences, who are sharing those experiences with the world. And let me tell you something. Some of you do not believe in the idea of saving a life. And I want to tell you something. I want to share with you. That is a lie. You can save a life. I am not talking about, when you stand by and watch something occur, a neighbor, a friend, a family member, an animal that's being abused, and you say to yourself, well, I don't have enough time, someone else will do it. No, that's not true. The movie is being played right in front of your eyes for a reason. We all have the opportunity to save a life. And we should, because this is part of the way in which we are going to unify as a planet, which has already begun. And humanity's got to stick together, and we have to look out for one another. Saving a life could be as simple. Here's a quick one for you. There was a man who was really down and out. He was standing on a street corner in New York City, true story. And he was going to step out in front of a bus. He had lost his home, lost his family, lost his kids, lost his job, and he couldn't take it. And he was going to step out in front of the bus and kill himself. And a woman just happened to be walking by and noticed him sort of wavering on the street corner, teeter-tottering, I guess. And she put her hand on his shoulder and she smiled. She didn't say anything. She just smiled. And he turned around and he looked at her and he smiled back. And the long version, how it ends up, is that she saved his life that day. It was the first time somebody had looked at him with non-judgmental eyes in a very long time. And that smile resonated through his whole body, and it gave him hope that he was just temporarily insane for wanting to step out of off that street corner and get hit by a bus. And he later tracked this woman down. It took him years, as a matter of fact. He tracked her down to tell her that she saved his life that day. And the woman didn't even know it. She just put his hand on his shoulder, and she smiled. And then she kept walking. So we can save lives. And I would like you just to consider that. Look at your life, look at your arena, look at your workspace, anything, and those around you, and animals, people alike. Look around you, because there is always someone who needs us. There's always someone there that just needs, like the woman did, just a smile can change somebody's entire life or day or moment. So I'd like you to consider that, and I want to say I am honored to have saved some of the lives this past few months that I've been a part of. I am honored. I have no words for it. The amount of love that I feel in my heart back when I see these lives changed for the better. So I want to thank all of you who participate in some of these prayer circles that I throw up there every now and then on Facebook, because a lot of you have shown up and really given of yourselves. And I just really appreciate you. So thank you so much. And I just want to say quick about Revolution Radio. Revolution Radio is all about volunteers. All of the hosts on Revolution Radio bring you programming, good programming to enlighten, and whatever it is, conspiracy, what have you. And all of the hosts, all 52 I believe we have now, are volunteers, as well as all of our producers, all the way up to the top, who is the owner, Hawk. Nighthawk. Nighthawk works around the clock and has for over 2.5 years, and has really brought this radio station up to the top. I don't know if you know it, but we are the #1 internet radio station that does not, commercial free. We're commercial free. So we also want to thank those of you who keep us going, those of you who have been donating to Revolution Radio, and those of you who have been subscribing to the archives. We appreciate what you're doing to keep us on the air, telling the truth, speaking the truth, and bringing you programs like the one we're bringing tonight. So I want to just say thanks so much, and big hugs to all of you for caring. There are a lot of people in the world right now who aren't quite there. So you're awake if you're here, and I just want to thank you. So thumbs up to everyone who's listening and those of you who are participating in the chat room. Without any further ado, let me introduce my guest. And first, quoting from Michael, he says, "Imagine this, if you will. You experience strange ET contact and happenings your entire life. They begin to communicate through telepathy, leading you to a cosmic spiritual truth regarding how thought creates reality, subject matter. They begin to reveal themselves in the physical, in orbs of light and plasma over Lake Erie. They allow you to film them. Your footage goes viral, gaining worldwide attention. Your footage lands you on a primetime TV show called UFO Hunters on the History Channel. On the episode, they decide to test your blood, and it is revealed you do not have normal human blood, a very rare blood anomaly bloodline that the world's best military and civilian doctors are at a loss to explain. The host of the show, legendary UFO researcher Bill Burns, goes on to say, I've got a funny feeling that you are being recruited and that there is a branch of the government that you're being recruited for. That somehow, some way you are a hybrid between ET and humans. And they are giving you a course of study, preparing you to meet your ET higher self. This is fascinating, folks. Really fascinating. Soon after the airing of this show, he was contacted by a branch of the government and offered a course of study. And then he was met by beings claiming to be ETs themselves. And these beings announced themselves as the Anunnaki. Where have we heard this before? Which is a term at that point in time that Michael didn't even know the meaning of. These Anunnaki, tell you that you yourself are an Anunnaki incarnated into the Nephilim, quote unquote, royal human Anunnaki hybrid bloodline. And then this secret branch of the government begins to inform and guide you to information that makes sense out of all of this. Is this not fascinating, folks? This evening, Michael, who is a musician, a filmographer, and of course a UFO experiencer, will be joining us to talk about some of the events that have occurred in his life in more detail. And he's going to share with us what it means and how his life has changed with this knowingness that he now has. So without any further ado, welcome to the show, Michael Lee Hill. Michael, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Roxy. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Michael, your story is fabulous, and I just want to thank you for your bravery, because it takes courage to tell your story all over the world. But as we can see, when you told your story, people listened. So let's start with how are you living in this world as a musician and a filmographer and a UFO experiencer? I mean, wow, and knowing all of this about your bloodline, and what kind of experience are you having?
Well, it's been quite a ride, because just back shortly, 2008, I didn't know who the Anunnaki were. I didn't know what a bloodline even was. So this is all very recent happenings that have unfolded in my life. The UFO Hunter show was in 2008. So I'm still adjusting. I'm still in. Really, it hasn't ended. My learning and knowledge, which I could share some of this, I'd be excited to do, into the Nephilim actually migrating into northern Ohio, and they became the mound builders who left like the Serpent Mound and all these, the Ohio earthworks in Newark. There's so much information going to be coming out, and I think it's mind-blowing. I'm excited about it. So I'm along for the ride with everyone else. This isn't something that's finished,
Absolutely. And I've interviewed people who are working on those mounds in Ohio. And it is absolutely fascinating what's being, it's kind of weird. I think it's all suppressed, and to find this in our own country now. To start to see, right?
Own backyard.
Yeah, own backyard, because, we hear about Egypt and all these other, glorious places all over the world, and, pyramids, and UK, for the Stonehenge, and now we've got it right here, and you've got to wonder, okay, what took them so long to find this stuff?
Yeah, and why was it suppressed? Because you find that, those giant skeletons that were unearthed from the mounds, it's been proven the Smithsonian was there. They took them and they disappeared. It's kind of like that movie Indiana Jones, where they just shuffle off the ark at the end into the big warehouse at the end, never to be seen. There's a story here, that hasn't been told.
Absolutely, and I love it, and I love your enthusiasm, because it's just more information for us all to have to prove our history. Our history's really been, like you said, suppressed. So, right, yeah. And it doesn't, I'm hearing this more and more, Michael, from all of my guests, that this is slowing down our evolution. That if we had all this information, and started to meet our brothers and sisters from, other galaxies and other places, and if we knew this, all along, we could move forward. And, the fact that it's been hidden, these secrets, but people like you come out and give it to the world, and validate many people, in the world. So it's a good thing. I'm really fascinated. Can we talk about the UFOs over Lake Erie? Can we jump into that for a little bit? Because I find that story really fascinating.
Oh, me too. I would love to. Yeah, it's quite an experience to see them. So yeah, please.
Okay. Well, I know that from what I understand, it started in the summer of 2006 with some UFO sightings over Lake Erie, I believe, which is, for those who don't know, one of the Great Lakes. And I think what I'd like to know is what made this in particular something that kind of stopped you, because I do know, one, for a fact that it's a no-fly zone, so I guess it caught your eye that there was something flying.
Well, the fact of the matter is, I live very close to the lake. I'm about 10 houses away from the lake, so I can walk down my road and I'm there. So me and my bass player that's in my band, we were just taking a break, and we were out in my backyard, and right over the shore of the lake, which it's 10 houses away then, right, was this huge craft, and it was probably the closest of anything like that I've ever seen. And we sat there and watched it for a good, 5-6 minutes, and then it just vanished. I didn't get that one on film, but I had bought a Sony camcorder, and I really wasn't using it for anything. So it sparked my curiosity to start finding parks along the lake that I could go down to around sunset, and I would just set up my camcorder on a tripod, and I would just watch the sunset and hang out all night sometimes, and just wait for them. And that was back in about 2005, and I've accumulated quite a library of that footage.
No doubt. So, with that in mind, what was the significance of, I suppose there's one particular sighting that happened in 2006 that was more significant than the others. Can you share that with us?
Well, there's been so many experiences. The one that I think you're talking about is, it was almost like mental telepathy, where I was instructed to, you should come outside and bring your camera. And when I walked outside, there was this apparition. It almost looked like a snow angel made out of cloud material, but very distinct. And it was all glowing. And it was so bright, it looked like the full moon behind a cloud, but it was glowing like this purple color that was just mind-blowing. So I had my camcorder there. I filmed it, and it is up on my YouTube site. But this is going to sound funny. I had never used this camcorder before, so I had the camera in the wrong mode. So that footage is not some of the best footage, but when I clicked it into night mode, I'm filming at night with the infrared. It is absolutely amazing, and the interesting thing is it's revealed after this that this craft was seen in 7 states, and the MUFON director for Kentucky had drawn a picture of it that's released to the media, and you can see these objects are exactly the same. So now, right after that, is when the media came out and said it's just an Atlas missile doing a fuel dump. I guess that they really should have thought about. They didn't know someone filmed it. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Now, how did you get in contact with UFO hunters at that point? That right around that time is when UFO hunters got a hold of you. Is that correct?
Yes. What had happened was this one clip I got in particular was just really fascinating. This double-orbed object was really close, and it was so bright, and I had it really perfectly in frame. And what was interesting is I had a friend of mine, his name's Chris Mahaley, and he was with me down there. So this is multiple witnesses, and you can hear us both in real time, responding to what we're seeing. And as this first object is there, a second object just manifested out of nowhere and flew right over top of the one I was filming. I got it all on film, That footage has went viral because it is amazing and it's real, Right now it's at, I think, 1.1 million views on YouTube, and that drew the attention of the UFO hunters. That's why I was contacted in the first place by Pat Uskert, because of my video going viral. So that's how that happened.
That's excellent. And I'm glad they picked it up and interviewed you as well, because, it just got millions more interested in what you're doing. How exciting. That's really exciting.
Right on.
Yeah, I love it. And so let's see. Now, there's something about the area that, and then we'll move on, but that area, not only is it a no-fly zone, but apparently there are power plants there, and a peri-nuclear power plant, I guess, is about 18 miles east of there, that nuclear plant, I guess. Do you think that these UFOs do you think that there's a correlation to that nuclear plant?
Yes, but you know what? It's not the nuclear plant. It is actually the CEI electric coal plant that is in East Lake, Ohio. What you will find is this is a famous location of a most famous UFO event that was happening right here. And Richard Dolan included this UFO event in the top 10 best UFO sightings ever because of the government documentation that backs it up. And this is the CEI power plant had this huge UFO sighting where a triangular craft was seen by a family that lived down there. And it was huge, and it was really close to the shore. Well, they called the East Lake Police Department. The police went down. It's all on record. All these things are verifiable to any researcher. They went down. They made a report. They said, we don't know what to do. We're going to call the Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard from Fairport Harbor, which is about 10 miles east of East Lake, they sent 2 official Coast Guard agents, down to the scene. They sat there and witnessed it for 20 minutes and actually released a report, a Coast Guard official report, which I've obtained that actual report, and I gave it to the History Channel, and that's they show it in that episode you were talking about.
Yes, that's excellent, and so they didn't even bother to cover it up.
No, and what you'll find is look into that event. Oh, check this out. So you have that same power plant where this famous UFO sighting happened with government documentation. Now fast forward to, I think, 2003. Remember the blackout that took out all the northern United States and the southern Canada?
The blackout, yes.
Yeah. Well, do a little research. You'll find that they wanted to trace down and see what happened, where the actual problem occurred in the power grid. It's the CEI power plant of East Lake, Ohio, the exact same location of the 1988 Coast Guard event. Isn't that unbelievable?
That's synchronistic. How yes, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Now, have you looked into CEI electric power plant at all any further to find, for instance, what's relative to this sighting? What's there's got to be something behind this that they're involved in. Are they involved in something, you think?
I don't know, but I have heard from very, very good sources from within, the military-industrial complex. As you said, I was contacted, and I've learned so much. The head guy that I had met, which, this is going to be strange, but I've not been able to talk about him for so long because I promised him I would not shine a light his way. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And we became very close friends, and I never did that. I never gave him up, and I kept that information to myself until now because he just passed away, and I feel a great loss there because he's one of the only people that brought any sense to any of this, and he's dearly missed. But the fact of the matter is now I can talk about him, which is a strange thing because this will be the first interview ever, and that was A.R. Borden, which I think you know who he is.
Yeah, I do. And what did Mr. Borden have to say? What was his take on it?
He said, "You know what's underneath you there, don't you?" And I said, "I heard that there's an underground base because I've heard from a lot of people, because under Lake Erie is also the world's largest salt deposits. And like Morton Salt is right here. And people would tell me that deep under these salt mines, there would come across a corridor where there was guards and military. You don't go down that shaft. You know what I mean? So I had heard that there was an underground base here for a while, but I had nothing to confirm it. Well, you know, AR asked me, he said, Michael, you know what's underneath you? And I said, yeah, I heard there's a secret base. And he said, yeah, but it's not ours. He said,
oh my.
He said it's one of the oldest underground bases of the Anunnaki that's on this planet. And he said, so I asked him, when was the last time you were down there? And he said about 2007. He said he went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, was one of the entrances to this, I guess, he said there's almost cities down there that are about I think he said, I got all the information still. I think he said about 300 feet below the surface is when he said.
And welcome back to the show. You know, we were just talking, Michael, about Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and this entrance, and then, of course, this base that's about 300 feet underneath the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So let me ask this: so does the military know about the ET base?
Probably not. I think the only people that truly know are the people who are in charge of the reverse engineering programs, the technology transfer programs that are administered and ran from the highest echelons of the NSA, to be the truth of it. So no, I doubt many presidents even know.
You know, and that seems to be the case, that very few people are, the government and the military, of course, are so compartmentalized, and of course the military is privatized, and so one hand doesn't speak to the other. So it's quite possible. I think that you're right. I think that the president doesn't know a lot about any of this stuff, and I doubtfully he'll ever be debriefed on it. So. Now, let's jump ahead just a little bit. I'm going to jump around with you if you don't mind, because this is also intriguing. In 2011, you did a documentary with the History Channel, and with another gentleman, young ex-military man from Virginia. I believe the name was Terrell Copeland.
Yeah,
and
actually, that was the UFO Hunter show from 2008.
That was okay.
I
So Terrell was Terrell on that show with you?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where that happened, and that's why that's a really fascinating story, because initially with the UFO Hunters, when they contacted me about my clip that had went viral, I was only supposed to be on the episode for like 5 minutes. And it wasn't until they were just doing an episode of people who have, recorded sightings all over the United States, and that was the premise of the show. What happened is they went and interviewed Terrell Copeland 2 weeks prior to coming to talk to me. And when they met Terrell had filmed the exact same spheres of light that I had over Lake Erie. He had the exact same story of contact, and actually the same spiritual information was given to him. But the strange thing is he was discharged from the military. He was a Marine, because the military doctors found he had an unknown blood anomaly, and none of the best doctors could figure it out, so he was discharged from the military. So what had happened was, Bill Burns, being the genius he is, I guess, thought, wow, here's these two guys that are 500 miles apart who have the exact same footage, same story. This guy has this blood anomaly. Wouldn't it be strange if this other person that are totally unconnected also came up with this total unknown blood anomaly? So what they did was decided to base this whole episode around this, and had me and Terrell flown to Boston to have our blood work done by a Harvard professor named David Systrom. And, it was done right, you know what I mean? So the end result was he revealed on the show that we don't have normal human blood. And we can get into, I know exactly what the difference is, if you want to get into that.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think it would be great. And one quick question. Why would he be discharged, though, just because his blood was different? That's kind of weird. I mean, in other words, the blood type that you have, and yes, let's go down that road. But the blood type that you both have doesn't change you and who you are, or it doesn't debilitate you or anything like that. So why would they discharge him?
Because they were getting ready to send him to another country, and the fact of the matter is the human body only produces this enzyme that we can talk about when the human body has been damaged. Is usually when it's released into the body, because it's called creatine kinase, and the body releases it to facilitate healing. It brings oxygen into the bloodstream. So the normal levels of this enzyme is 25 parts per liter of blood. This is all verifiable. You can just look it up on, on the net. If the human body's been damaged, usually muscle damage is the culprit that causes it. It'll make that level of creatine kinase rise to about 300, 350 tops is the limit. Terrell's was over 2,100, 24/7, and none of the doctors could figure out why his creatine kinase levels were through the roof. Like pretty much unheard of levels that don't even make sense. So if you take all this information, what you see is it's a bloodline that has super levels of oxygen being created within it, which equals chi, or life force, available at a cellular level that's available to the body, and truly this gets into why the Nephilim bloodline was created in the first place, because they needed a human vessel. From spiritual levels, which we can get into all this, it's an amazing story. The Nephilim was created so the Anunnaki could incarnate as a human into a body that could have a little bit of extra energy to facilitate their higher energy. Because when they would try to incarnate into a normal human vessel, they would spontaneously combust.
Interesting.
So they created, but from what they told me now, just because a human is born into this bloodline, they might not even know, and that extra chi might just lay dormant, because you need to be taught how to use it, like
sure.
Even in healing, and how to take that energy and transmit it to another for purposeful, you know what I'm saying.
Use, healing, whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. So
because it's life force. It's life force, abundant life force. It sounds like.
Yes. Indeed. And so this group of you know what? We can just skip to the chase, and I'm going to put a name on this group of individuals for the first time. The ACIO is the group that A.R. Borden was the head of. So we'll just leave that at that. But so I don't have to keep it's the ACIO.
What is the ACIO?
The Alien Contact Interface Organization, which is one of the highest secret factions of the NSA. They're the ones that are truly in pulling the strings in one sense, but not even, they're way above the Illuminati. These petty melodramas that are working out here, they're not. It gets into a deep subject, but that's who
Sure
they are.
Sure it does. So the NSA is obviously with the ACIO. I guess the ACIO's function would be to gather information and protect the information.
Yeah, and even look into it. What they're looking into is like what they call new life physics. It's how light and sound creates our physical reality and how we understand it, and how to start processing that as a human and learning what that means, that our mental energy creates our experience, and it can be beautiful, but we just need to do our homework and weed the fear and doubt out of our own belief systems, because the only person that can do it is you. You know what I mean? And
certainly.
So really what I understand is they wanted to implement a very long time ago an experiment to accelerate human conscious evolution. And that's when the Nephilim bloodline was created, because they were told from higher spiritual levels, you can't do that, something that's never even been done before, unless you're willing to go in and guide it from the inside. So
wow.
That's what happened. And it all goes back to Noah's flood. It's beautiful, that one of them went to bat for mankind, which his name was Enki. And that humanity was spared, where the rest of his race was going to let us perish in the last flood. And there's a whole nother story there that hasn't been told about how that actually happened, And, there's so much beautiful stories here. Because let me tell you, the Anunnaki were not horny space travelers going around and seeing the human and we're just all sex crazed. That is not what happened. That's like the dumbing down of the story to the lowest common denominator. There was a reason why the Nephilim bloodline was created, and it was to serve mankind and to be here to try to help and guide. But we could get into that experiment. I found out exactly. I mean, there are two sides. There is a team of light and there is a team of darkness. So it's not all the Anunnaki are this or the Anunnaki are that. You'll get what you are looking for to help you learn in either side. I look at it as good cop and bad cop,
Of course, and that imprint seems to be very earthly. The dark, the light, the yin, the yang, the good cop, bad cop. That's a very that imprint is on humanity for sure.
Yes.
Yes.
That was the experiment, is bringing duality to an upcoming consciousness and letting them choose other than the divine will. Because truly, you know what I'm saying? It's like if you're living in the divine flow of everything, that is the most beautiful reality you can imagine. But it's just a fascinating subject.
It is, absolutely. Can I go back to ask you one more question about what I want to know is what the idea that the two of you came together on that one show is just phenomenal. Have you ever spoken with Terrell after the show or anything like that? In other words, kept up with him? Because again, I want the listeners to understand that this creatine kinase in the blood, that's usually 200 UL for
usually
right?
25.
Oh, 25. Thank you.
Yeah.
For a normal person is 25, and I believe that you said Terrell's was 2100.
Yeah, and when my level was tested in Boston by the Harvard professor, they had said that my levels were almost identical to Terrell's.
Terrell's, okay.
Yeah, and I can tell you from the insiders that I've met, they said that there's 12 members of their own group that have this bloodline, and our levels of 2100 would put us in about the middle of those, with the highest being 12,000 was the highest level of anyone.
Oh, is that right?
That's what they told me. I thought that was kind of interesting.
That is interesting. Now, do you feel, and I don't know if at what length you spoke with Terrell, but between the two of you, what you do know, do you feel different? Does he feel different as a human being? Do you feel different, or do you just basically feel healthy?
I feel great. I feel very healthy. Terrell and I have become like brothers. He's come to Cleveland and visited me here. I took him down to the lake. We still talk to this day. And he's matter of fact, he's coming to visit again sometime within the next few months, from what I know. Terrell's a great dude, and is he different? Yeah, he is almost like a religious scholar. He is one of the most fascinating people to talk to about many different religions. It's not just, it's almost like comparative religion guy, but almost where he sees the truth that is in all these different teachings. And so that's what I love talking with Terrell. I think he's one of the most kind, nice people that I've ever met.
And any explanation that you know of, other than what you've sort of hinted at, any other explanation as to why, if my understanding is correct, if these levels are this rare and very high, and very few people have been seen with these types of levels of creatine kinase, and especially when there's been no muscle damage or anything, no ongoing anything, it doesn't give a reason for this this super oxygenated bloodstream, so to speak. Do you think you might be related or something?
Well, yes. I really do look that we are of the same bloodline, but I think it's even the reason that those levels are there. I just I don't know. I do see it in Terrell's behavior of just how caring he is to other people.
Well, is your DNA different? Have you had your DNA tested?
You know what? I have not. They have.
I would love to be a part of that. I would love to see if your DNA and Terrell's, as a matter of fact, is any different.
Because what I can share with you, which I've never revealed this before, because I think it's pretty interesting, is because it wasn't aired in the UFO Hunters episode, but Terrell can confirm this, that the Harvard doctor, David Systrom, he told us if he had to make a guess to what was causing these elevated levels of creatine kinase, he would think that there was some kind of unknown to mankind virus. That he said not all viruses are bad. They can work at the level of DNA, and he would, if he had to make a guess, he said he would think it was some kind of unknown virus that was tricking the body into releasing just massive amounts of creatine kinase 24/7. And, the body evolves and adapts around those levels and everything changes, and it creates the bloodline.
Isn't that interesting? And I wonder, with this ACIO, I wonder if they have any evidence of those that have been tested that are in your league as well. You mentioned that there were 12, but is that coming from those reports?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Let me share this because A.R. Borden is the head of the ACIO, or was. As I said, he just passed away. He only did one interview ever that he granted to the masses, and he chose to do it with me. And so all of you can hear exactly, it was a 2-hour interview, and I got to really pick his brain and bring the information that I thought should be brought to humanity, through him. And so just type in A.R. Borden and Michael Lee Hill radio interview, and check it out.
Absolutely. I'll make sure to get that out to the public.
Yeah.
Now, Michael, what is technology transfer program? What is that?
That is different groups of extraterrestrials are already in contact with the higher echelons of the military-industrial complex. And from how I understand it, there was treaties made that, in exchange for them helping us gain technology, that they would be given something in return. They said that there's a lot of things that are very valuable here that we don't even know. Certain materials that we think are useless, but some of them are even more sinister because from what I understand, the Anunnaki actually contacted our government in 1954, and Bob Dean has confirmed this, and a lot of people that. Mm-hmm. So in the Eisenhower administration, the Anunnaki come and they say, "Listen, we're willing to help you evolve up through this, but you got to get rid of your nuclear power ambitions because you truly don't understand what you're dealing with, and it's not safe anyhow. And we can help you get to the point of using free, unlimited energy, but." You got to get rid of your nuclear power ambitions. And the fact of the matter is, we wouldn't do it. At that point, you can see coming right out of World War II, maybe that, that seemed like, what? We're going to just put down our weapons because you say so, but the fact of the matter is, the Anunnaki, from what was released about this, said, listen, we're not invaders. We're not going to come and take over. We'll go up and give you some time to figure this out if you don't want to do it. But whatever you do, do not partner with the Greys. You won't like your experience. And from what I understand, that's exactly what happened because they did not put out the requirement that they didn't care if we used nuclear power. Matter of fact, they'd give us other technology that was even crazier probably. But in return, we were supposed to let them abduct us. A certain amount of people to look at our emotional bodies, which they didn't have, functioning ones that much. So we were sold out by our own government, But I think all this is being revealed now. So, I asked AR, I said, how about, what do we have to do to get another offer on the table from them? You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think that's what's happening right now.
Yes. Yes, it makes sense. You got me going too, because when you're talking about the nuclear, not to extinguish all use of nuclear, there was a big event and a disclosure event about that, and I don't remember what year it was. Sorry, but where there were nuclear power plants being, shut down all over the world.
Yeah.
Right. And
there's a message, huh?
Right. Yeah, no kidding. And of course, everyone that was near the nuclear plant saw a UFO and then their nuclear plant would get shut down. So there was a disclosure on that with I believe it was 27 to 30 military men who came forward, very brave men around the world, and said, yes, this really happened. And if that's not enough to let us know that we need to start, it's so dangerous. That's why, and I think that there's been a lot since Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yeah. I think that opened up a big concern, if you will, to some of the ETs out there, that we had the potential now to just blow up our own planet.
Yeah, and look how this fits into the Washington Press Club conference that happened, about 2 years ago, about all these very high-ranking military people who were testifying that these orbs of light went over nuclear power installations and made their missiles go into no-go. And then you have other testimonies of test flights of nuclear rockets being filmed, and an orb of light flies in and takes it out.
Intercepts, yes.
Yeah, so it's like they've been trying to warn us all along, and it seems like, it started in 54, and, exactly, look what we've done with Fukushima. Maybe they have technology to help us. I hope so. I think so. But we need them to come back to the talking board here.
Yeah. What do you think about, okay, let's go, let's do this. What do you think about again, back to your blood type, and you've just sort of discovered this, Michael, in the last few years. Do you think that it's very possible that you are a manifestation or part of the either Nephilim or Anunnaki, probably Nephilim? And then, do you think that you are here, like, to serve a purpose, to sort of be enlightened and enlighten others, type of thing, to maybe perhaps help the planet?
Well, you know what? I know so.
Okay.
And it actually was confirmed by them. I went through what you could call the Ascension Process in the fall of 2008. And this is when it's like you're vetted to see if you're a clean vessel. And I can suppose many don't make it because it was not easy. But after that time period is when this full-on communication, telepathy, through telepathy happened. They said, Michael, you've done it. You have done what you came here to do already, which was choose love relentlessly. No matter what the outside circumstances were, they said, I chose love. And correctly and every time, because fear wears many masks, and we're all, especially what gets tricky is no matter even if you work through your own energy, you're still part of the mass consciousness. And if you don't learn to understand where different energies are coming from, you very easily make them your own, and then you'll just experience that reality, But they said, you've done what you came to do. So now what do you want to do? And I took this question very, very seriously, because who I was talking to in my mind, I'm like, wow, right now, if I did have my choice of just whatever I wanted to do for the rest of my life, I said, I want to be a musician. I want to play music. They said, you know what? That's perfect. We're not looking for an evangelist, and we're not looking for a politician. You being a musician is perfect, and let your freak flag fly. That was
right on.
That was their exact words to me.
Wow.
Yeah. But
that's pretty hip.
Yeah, that's what happens.
That's pretty hip, and obviously, it is a sense of freedom that's coming off of you, exuding from you. Actually,
I love life.
Right?
So
you love life, and Why do you think it's important to be a musician? Is it simply because you have the passion for it, or is there something very connected to you with music that you really need to do?
Super important, we're finding out. Matter of fact, there's studies coming out that prove that children who become musicians at an early age, your brain develops differently. There's new pathways that are set up, because if you think about it, most people will ever in their life either come at life through their left side of their brain or their right side of their brain. They're either going to come at it through the more creative side if you're an artist or something, but if you grew up being an engineer, you're probably going to look at life through that analytical part of your brain. There's not too many people or too many things that you can do on this planet that will make both hemispheres of the brain fire simultaneously. One of them is music. The other one is meditation. It's the only two things that are known that, and what's that called? When you use the waves, the subsonic waves, I heard that can sync up your hemispheres as well. I forget the name of that. But, so, just on a technological point, you understand that music is rewiring the brain because it's one of the most taxing things the human mind can do with itself. Music is temporal. It's, mathematical. But then here's the thing, besides all of that, we're starting to learn that frequency creates geometry. And, so many people are starting to understand what sacred geometry is and how frequency is related. From what I learned from A.R. Borden, he said that what this truly is about is becoming conscious co-creators. And, which means you manifest your own reality instantly. We all do it anyhow. This bit of information has been released in films like What the Bleep Do We Know and The Secret.
Sure.
And I think that's fantastic. So what we're talking about is how to snap out of the reaction, being part of the mass consciousness, to coming up out of that and becoming responsible for your own mental energy and becoming a conscious co-creator. And he said to do that, truly, you need to know, like, the true Pythagorean scale of music mentally, that it's actually a part of how light, because of sound entrances the light. The light slows its frequency and becomes physical due to our own consciousness of what we're expecting. And it's done, our thoughts create vibration and frequency, and we've not been taught this. But certain organizations like HeartMath, which I'm sure you've talked to some of those people, they're proving that, our bodies are transmitters of energy. We're like radio stations that are beaming energy, but you just can't hear it or sound, So you can see how having intuitive musical intelligence can be very important if you want to be able to chant certain tones that help light become physical matter through vibration.
Okay, it makes sense to me, and I love when you talk about the frequency, co-creating geometry. That we're all conscious co-creators, and that the frequency is creating geometry. There's a flip side to that too, because there can be good geometry, sacred geometry, and then there's the what's your take on the inverted of that, the reverse of the sacred geometry?
Well, you know what? I think it's fascinating because the biggest example of that is them changing our musical standard to...
Welcome back to the show. Those of you who are just joining us for the next hour of the show, my guest is Michael Lee Hill. We're having a fascinating discussion, and you and I were just talking about the A equals 440, and I'm very familiar. I'm a musician myself, and so musicians out there are totally know what you're talking about. And then you started to, and yes, you're right, 440 is what we tune to. It's pretty average. And then you talked about 432. We were just about to talk about that when we had to go to break. So talk on.
Well, the best way to visualize this is people know, like, I'm sure your audience knows of Dr. Emoto's work with the water. Well, they found ways of showing what vibration does to physical matter in different mediums, whether it be a water molecule or like a sand polymer. And you can see as the sound goes through frequency sweeps that it forms geometry, and the geometry grows in dimension and through the higher that the frequency is, meaning the image will go from a two-dimensional image to, if it's a square, when a different threshold is met, it'll turn into a physical 3D box inside the water molecule, and so on and so forth. So with this in mind, every note where it is putting out the most energy is going to have a certain frequency. And for A, like if you just do a frequency sweep and you're looking at the actual geometry being created, when you get to A equals 432 hertz, it's almost like the geometry snaps into its sharpest, distinct lines. The image is intact as you're going to get. Now you start moving away from 432, and it's almost like you're taking the focus on a camera and you're defocusing the picture. When you get to 440, it just looks like ripples. There's no more geometry even there.
Now, why did we change to 440? I can't remember. There's an answer to this, but I can't remember what it is. Why did we change?
It was
Go ahead.
The Nazis.
Really?
Yeah, isn't that mind-blowing? So how do you start a worldwide revolution to change the musical standard to A equals 432?
Right.
I'm going to run with it. I'm going to call my band Michael Lee Hill and the Cosmic 432.
I think a lot of people want to join it. And there's something else with hertz as well, the Schumann Resonance.
Yes.
Yeah, the 7.83 hertz. And it's interesting, basically the heartbeat of the earth. We're trying to kind of get back to that. The heartbeat of the earth, and music and drums and all the rest of it used to be rhythmic and in sync with the earth, and we've gotten away from that. So wow, I don't remember hearing that it was Nazi Germany that actually caused that. And I know for sure in rock and roll, I mean, it's standard 440.
You know what? Yeah, actually check this out. It's not. Some of the most profound and great musicians adopted a standard of, they call it half step down tuning. Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Billy Gibbons, the list just goes down the line. All these musicians tuned their instruments a full half step down. A lot of them said it was the easier to sing because it put it into a more human voice friendly register. But really, think about it. They were getting their instruments out of that A equals 440. They were even going lower than 432, but I can guarantee you it was still better geometry being formed than the A equals 440.
Oh, you're reminding me even of the whole turn of from 1989 to 1990 through the 90s of the whole grunge music.
Yeah, drop D.
Drop D, exactly. So, yeah, oh, wow, that's kind of cool to know. I mean, I wonder if we'll all just transition right out of it. Isn't that interesting? Well, thanks for that note, because it all goes back to part of this evolution that we're in anyway, and how we're moving towards, actually we're moving back to what we practice as ancient civilizations did, and at the same time we're also moving forward. So we've got a little bit of both going.
Yeah, absolutely. They absolutely knew in the past, with the work by Nassim Haramein, and how, some of these geometries were etched into pyramids in a way that we don't even know. It's like they were etched into it with a laser, and they show the exact geometry that we're talking about, the flower of life being the most important and prominent geometry that there is. So if anyone wants to start with looking into what sacred geometry is, just type in flower of life and start doing a little research. It's fascinating.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about Bigelow. I think it's Bob Bigelow from Bigelow Aerospace. He contacted you about the Lake Erie UFOs. How'd that happen? And what was his interest?
Yeah, there's a fascinating story. Back in, it would have been 2011, there was an incident where it got to the point where these UFOs were showing up every night for like 10 days in a row, and it grew And that snowball got so big that it was on MSNBC. They started covering the story, and simultaneously, a couple very strange things happened. First of all, MUFON at the time was owned by Bigelow, funded by Bigelow. They sent MUFON onto the scene, and MUFON publicly declared they're just airplanes, case closed. Simultaneously, witnesses of the event here started being contacted by an investigator from Bigelow. His name was Gary Hernandez. And so right there, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? To the public, to quell the story, they put out that case closed. By behind the scenes, he's contacting all of us. Well, Gary Hernandez and I now have spoke many times on the phone and via email, and I've learned so much from him. He said that they know that what is over Lake Erie is the real thing because it's exactly what they're witnessing over the Utah Skinwalker Ranch, which
right.
They own the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. He said they know it's the same orbs of light that they're talking about that they've witnessed and are experiencing there is here. But he said, Michael, do you know these things are showing up all over the world? He said, I'm the investigator for this whole part of the planet. It would be Niagara Falls, Canada. And he said he knows that they're showing up all over this area. And he also told me where to look into some information that was declassified by the UK Ministry of Defence recently, which specifically spoke about these plasma orbs of light being the real deal, and it actually revealed a very interesting piece of information. It said that 3 of these orbs of light can come together and using some process that's unknown to mankind can create one physical triangular craft that reflects starlight and radar signatures. It, for all essences, 3 separate objects create one huge triangular craft. And that's pretty amazing technology.
Now, is that military or ET?
This is the orbs of light, which I can tell you. I got a way to.
Are they military or ET though?
Absolutely, they're ET, and I can prove this because of my own research into this area. I traced the activity over Lake Erie back into the mid-1800s with actual newspaper articles that were released by the Cleveland newspaper of that time, the Cleveland Dealer. And they said that it was a common occurrence to see these luminous orbs of fire hovering out over the lake, and many times ships would be sent out as a rescue mission because they thought somehow it was an optical illusion and a ship was on fire and it just looked like it was over the horizon. They would send out ships and there was nothing there. And I have those newspaper articles, and actually my whole timeline of activity, Wes Penray, pretty famous writer, I collaborated with him and gave him all this info. So anyone that's interested and wants to see exactly what I'm talking about, just type in my name, Michael Lee Hill, and Wes Penray. That's WESPENRE. And by the way, Whitley Strieber just endorsed this bed of knowledge that me and Wes worked on and said it was the best research into a UFO case he's ever come across. So I thought that was very nice.
I think that's very great. Yeah, very cool for you. Because, Whitley is also a contactee and
Indeed.
He also has a lot of knowledge on the subject and so forth. Back to, just to wrap up the Bigelow thing.
Right.
What did Bigelow end up taking away from the conversation he had with you? I mean, what's his major interest there?
They said that there's great money, pretty much there's a lot of money involved in trying to figure out their propulsion systems. And see, this is the thing I got to tell you because this is very important. All this information we're talking about, I partnered with Spike TV and worked 6 months of my life last year, and at the last moment it wasn't allowed to be broadcast. The Wes Penray essays that I'm talking about made up the beginning of this series. So because of this and because of my contact now with these people behind the scenes, I was invited into a internet like we're doing now, like a Skype session, internet meeting with 8 individuals from high echelons, you know. And they said, because at this point I just found out my Spike TV show was shut down. So they said, Michael, we want to tell you why this subject matter has been kept from the American people for the last 25 years. And we want to tell you why your Spike TV show is in the same category. And I was like, well, I'm all ears, you know. What they said was exactly what we're talking about with it leading to their propulsion systems. That they said that we don't understand that free energy, unlimited free energy, isn't that hard to understand. And that many, without even alien intervention, you know, people like Nikola Tesla figured it out. But even though he said he was in contact, right? So I guess it's just a cycle. But that free energy will be available to every single person on this planet, no one excluded, no matter whether you're homeless right now. Think about the change of that. But that sounds great, you know, and everyone has been saying it. And I thought the same thing. Like, the only reason this has been withheld is because they own the oil slavery system that they all have us under, right? The oil and banking families that are truly running everything. And obviously they're not looking out for the benefit of the humanity, that's for sure.
Well, do you think Bigelow is or isn't? I mean, I know he's been trying to develop.
I think he's a good dude, but you know, really what we're getting into is when Jesse Ventura did the show on Robert Bigelow, he confronted him and he said, yes, will you ever release this information to the masses? And Robert Bigelow said, I don't think so, and I don't see any time in the foreseeable future where that would make sense. So right there he tells you they're not going to tell us, you know. And they said,
and that's been verified. You know, Michael, just to interject here, I don't know if you're familiar with Stephen Bissett.
Oh, yeah, I'm a huge fan of his work.
He was on the show very recently, and he brought up the free energy gig like you are. And what he's doing is he's now taking PRG, which is his organization that he's had for 14 years, and he's turning it into, he's going to lobby the government now. He's going to lobby the government for UFO disclosure in light of releasing the evidence so that the world can have free energy.
Yeah, but you know what they asked me, and I think this is a great talking point that I've not heard brought up. Okay. What they said, what do you do with the people that would misuse it? If every single person is going to have access to unlimited free energy, how do you think the people that bomb their brothers and sisters in the neighboring country because they believe differently than them, how do you think that they're going to use their unlimited free energy? You know, I stopped and I went, oh my God, I never really thought of that.
That's interesting. That's interesting. But as far as, you know, I guess it would be what type of unlimited free energy, for starters? I mean, if we're talking about electricity for whatever, I mean, put it this way. Those who are in the war rooms and the militaries of the world can get all the energy they want right now.
Absolutely.
So
you know I responded.
In other words, the bad guys already own all that grid. It just costs money. And all that would happen is now it would be free. So I don't know that it's a valid point. You know, I don't know. Maybe one day free energy will become like unlimited minutes on your cell phone.
Well, what they're saying is, you know, if it's truly every single person has access to it, you know, for a very little bit of money, you're going to be able to, you know, make a weapon that's going to be used. My response was, man, I think every enlightened civilization that is out there had to have went through a similar phase in their own evolution, where if they didn't grow spiritually as fast as they were technologically, they're going to self-implode. And I said, how about we have a talk with those races that have made it through this phase maybe a million years ago. Imagine what we could learn from a race that learned how to get along and has been doing so ever since. And they said, well, they think that is a good way to bring this forward. But, you know, what was said, too, is they thought that they would reveal the existence of these beings in our past first in a way that's not deniable, like unearth one of the pyramids. That's, you know, through ground-penetrating radar, they know that only about 1% of truly what's under Egypt has been unearthed. You know, up until 1900, the Sphinx was buried up to its neck in sand. Said there's pyramids under Egypt's sand that dwarf the Great Pyramid of Giza, and these pyramids don't have their outer casings ripped off by humans like we did to build temples and stuff, People don't even know that. Well, a lot of people that the pyramids we see in Giza had an outer wall that was smooth to the tolerance of a mirror that was like a marble-like material. Can you imagine, like, when we... I guess my point is, let's just reveal Earth's true history.
Yes.
Period. Let the cards fall where they may. I think
yes.
we as a race deserve to know, Look how this gets into America's ancient past and the Nephilim, the tribes that moved here, that's being proven right now by these giants being unearthed from the earth mounds. It's all connected. I think it's so exciting.
It is, and you're right. There is so much right here on this planet without even going off planet.
Yeah.
That we can reveal right here, expose. And I do think it's absolutely fascinating because, especially in the last decade, unearthing, cities under the ground now. Finding under, like what you said with the Giza pyramid and the sand, they're one after the other. They're unearthing, they're moving sand and finding all these cities and under the water as well. And of course, Atlantis is starting to look more and more a reality that it truly did exist. Which we could probably learn something about the city of Atlantis as well. But, no, you're right. And at one point, there are so many people at this point, Michael, that are also bringing forward that there are ETs assisting and walking us through this, trying to help us out as far as evolution goes and keeping the planet. Intervention is necessary at this point. But with 7 billion people on the planet, you were talking about the free energy. Back to that, and who would use it? It's always that 1% that's using everything for bad. As far as the 7 billion on the planet, most people would not build bombs, would not do anything destructive with their free energy. So I think it's a false I don't know what to call it, a false flag, if you will, to even say, oh, we're concerned about the planet. You know what I'm saying? I think it's BS.
Well, you know what? I thought it was an interesting point, but as you say, let's talk about it then. What can we do to get past this? If that's what you feel, let's talk about how we can get past this, because it's inevitable. It's just natural progression, and it's going to unite humanity, I believe, and it's the great equalizer. Well, some of these people, I think that they were brought up into a belief system that is horrible, to be honest with you. You're either going to, man, this gets into a strange subject, but when this experiment of duality was brought to mankind to try to accelerate, they divided into two teams, from what I understand. One team of light, and they would try to inspire mankind through the level of thought, creativity, and wit within the species themselves, of ideas of agriculture and science and higher mathematics and spiritual truths. Well, there was another team who was in service to humanity just as well, whose their job was to see if someone vibrated fear, they'd make sure you got a chance to experience your own mental energy reflected back to you by a loving universe. Hopefully you'll change it, and because that's the only thing that can transmute a negative thought form. Many people talk about negative energy. They really, if thoughts have energy, which they do, and energy can't be created or destroyed, it needs to be transmuted. So no one's ask the question, well, how do you transmute a negative thought form? Well, you live it. It comes up in your own personal reality, and it's time for you to choose love. You can choose fear again, but then you just went down the same road you've went down 1,000,000 times in the past. You got to choose love. And that's what Team Dark is actually bringing to you. They're letting you see your own mental energy, and you don't have to go down that path. Choose love, and, I guess you just get what you need, they're telling me,
Sure.
And it's all in service to humanity. And Graham Hancock explained this beautifully in his unbelievably great series, Quest for the Lost Civilization. He came across a mural that gave their spiritual ideas, and it was called The Myth of the Churning of the Milky Ocean. They said the most important part of this myth was the ocean itself, because they believed that the whole universe that we know rested inside this Milky Ocean, and that there was two churners of this Milky Ocean, a team of light and a team of darkness. But it wasn't about one team beating the other team. The fact of the matter was they were working in cooperation to facilitate evolution. I think his own words were to usher like mankind into immortality. And that was Graham Hancock's own words of the translation of the spiritual mural that was in one of these ancient sites. So, instead of calling them these churners of darkness and light, I just look at them as team good cop and bad cop. And team bad cop cannot even touch you unless you allow them. Do you understand what I'm saying? They're powerless. All you have to do is know you have the power, and there's nothing that can intercede your space unless you believe it can.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, and I'm hearing that a lot as well from, believe it or not, a lot of UFO researchers have really come to that, that nothing, that can't touch you. I like your good cop, bad cop analogy because it means that they're both making concerted efforts together as one to accelerate, as you said, humanity. I love it. I think it's
There's
great.
a part of this that no one has ever brought up, and it's an integral part of understanding what's happening here. The Anunnaki have a kingship list, and what they told me was that kingship list is totally directly tied to the processional cycle. That through each age, how the Anunnaki relate to mankind changes, and that going through the last age into the age of Aquarius would mark a new time period for mankind. And that's fascinating to me because that is Inky, right? The man holding the buckets of water. I don't know if you know that.
Yes.
But,
yes.
His son Marduk in the kingship list, long before this time period that this experiment of duality was ever even implemented and put into place, he was listed that he would be the king over the earth realm during this certain time. He never knew that this experiment was going to be implemented where humanity's dark and light energies would be accelerated, So as you'll find out, according to the Anunnaki kingship list, Marduk assumed the throne. He was the king of the earth realm, and he also assumed the spiritual job in service to humanity to reflect back the negative polarity. So what you find is all these people who have abused their power in these secret societies and believe somehow that they were more important than the person in the street, they all are catering to a multidimensional being whose spiritual purpose is to make them experience their own dark energy, so hopefully it can be healed. That puts a whole new twist on things, don't it?
Yes, it really does because it makes it more palatable. For most people. And the idea that, some people are so angry, Michael, and they want to take down the corporations and take down the government and kill, and shoot down the chemtrail planes. And I have to tell people, get away from me. When you're talking about that kind of hate, I don't want to be around it. It's, you see what I'm saying? And no judgment. I just don't want to be around it. It's very interesting that we are sort of in this paradigm, locked in this paradigm that says, if you bad, I kill you. You do bad, I kill you. And it's like, and we're growing out of that, Michael, into, everything gets to be healed. And it's very interesting because I think the biggest thing that's in our way as a human species is the human ego. Michael, it's so fascinating, your experience, and I love that you bring up some oddities that we don't always take a look at in the world, and a new attitude, if you will, a shift in the attitude. Now, is this something that the Anunnaki or the Nephilim, is this something they have taught to you?
Yes and no. Back in the late 90s, I went through family trauma, tragedy. My aunt was living with my parents, who lived very close to me, and she was going through a divorce. And at the time, this new husband found out he was going to have to give her 50%, and he went to my parents' house and shot and killed her. And she lived for about a week, though. But I wasn't really ready for that experience, to be honest with you, and having to be strong and go into the emergency room with my parents. And I wasn't prepared to see what I saw. And made me hit a wall, I cried out to the universe for answers. I said, if there's anyone out there or in here, you need to speak up, because I need answers, because I don't understand how this could just happen, And I think that they heard my plea, because instead of just giving me knowledge, what they gave me was a thirst for knowledge that just came on strong. I just started to be guided to beds of spiritual information and books, and I read, within about 3 years, I realistically read hundreds of books. And what really changed my life was being guided to a bed of spiritual information that was channeled by a lady named Jane Roberts, and it's called the Seth material. And the whole Seth material just focuses around the fact that thoughts do create reality. And as a matter of fact, many quantum physicists have now went back and studied the Seth material, because they're finding out that the concepts that Seth communicated are the exact same that they're finding out in reality are true. And, of course, there's different labels attached, but they're the same. So after I just absorbed the Seth material, but after you understand that thoughts are creating your own reality, well, now you have to understand that there's no more reading needed. You need to start trying to implement these ideas into your life, and that's a whole lot harder, I found out, because you gotta start looking at your own belief system, and we're all programmed with a lot of fear, from the outside, and so you gotta weed through that stuff and find out, what the truth is. So.
Thanks for bringing up the Seth channelings, because I too was very interested in that years ago, and I thought it was just absolutely fabulous. And
very empowering.
Very empowering. And you're absolutely right. I love your attitude, Michael, because we can't just read and start, putting affirmations on our refrigerators. We actually need to take that out into the world. We need to take action, change our behavior, if you will. Tell me about your personal conference that's going to be held in October. What's that all about?
I'm so excited. For the first time, I'm going to be able to reveal all of my research and all my video compilations to the world. This is what, Spike TV show was, going to start doing. So I'm really excited to now be able to do this. And really no one else is involved other than Sacred Spirit Tours, which they've given me full range to do and, talk about what I want to talk about. So I'm really appreciative of them, coming together, partnering with me to present this. But what's going to happen is on October 26th, I got a whole day of presentations of everything that I learned from Bigelow, all the information that I was pointed to from the Bigelow investigator, all of my, the History Channel stuff. They've shown a few video clips of mine, but no one has seen my, some of my footage. It's just hasn't aired ever. It's on YouTube.
Oh, right.
So I'm going to be able to show all that for the first time to everyone. And then day 2 is going to be a trip to a sacred site here, which is very tied in with the ancient American history that we're finding out, because interestingly enough, that is accurately portrayed in the Book of Mormon. Isn't that fascinating?
Isn't that interesting?
Yes. And, if the Nephilim truly, as it's turning out, the scientific evidence is that they're called Aramites in, I believe, in Israel and, with the time of the Bible, but that they came here,
Right.
So, yeah, interesting times we're living in, huh?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's fascinating. And congratulations on doing your tour. I know that's October 26th and 27th, your conference, I should say. And
Yes.
We just dropped a link into the chat room for anybody who needs
Awesome.
it. And, of course, we'll put that into the article as well. So we'll remember to do that for you. And, wow, that sounds really, really fun. And tell me about there's a new book coming out in September. Was Bill Burns featuring you? What's that all about?
Mm-hmm. Bill Burns is releasing a new book September 1st called UFO Hunters, the book. It's a companion book to the series. And what he's doing is every chapter is going to give a lot of background information and stuff that happened behind the scenes and what has transpired since those episodes have aired. And so because of my being featured on the UFO Hunters, I was contacted by Bill. We've been in contact ever since the show anyhow, and he's actually become a dear friend of mine. And I really, matter of fact, I've said it often, I think he's way more connected. A.R. Borden said he's a cognitive, but let me tell you, before any of this happened, he knew that this was going to be happening, meaning I would be contacted by this branch of the government and what was going to be unfolding in the near future. I had no idea what he was talking about back then, but now I do, So people know too, he is the New York Times best-selling author. He co-wrote The Day After Roswell with Philip Corso, which gets into, you asked me about technology transfer programs. If anyone wants to do some background homework and research, get the book The Day After Roswell, and everything you ever wanted to know will be revealed for you from the people who were there that had the need to know. You know what? I got off track.
No, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. That's all right. We'll keep you moving. Let's see. You're gonna, as far as the book goes with Bill, which is the UFO Hunters, the book with Bill Burns, and a chapter that he's devoted to you. You're also going to be attending some upcoming media events, and two of them apparently are going to be at MUFON conferences. Do you know where? What part of the country?
Yeah, just so I want to thank Bill Burns again, because those opportunities were presented by Bill Burns. He started telling some of these organizers of these events, if you want the truth from you need to start listening to what this guy has to say, which thank God bless him, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's how these came about. And yes, in November, it's the MUFON Pittsburgh UFO conference, and I'm really looking forward to that. I have a lot of. This is an interesting story, but because of being on the UFO Hunters show, I was adopted, and they said, well, since you have this blood anomaly, you probably really should contact your biological parents and see if this is a genetic thing or whatever. So for the first time in my life, I've contacted my biological mother, and I met my two sisters, and they live in Pittsburgh, so that's going to be nice. So it'll be.
Oh my goodness! Have you met them in person yet?
Yes, I have.
And how was that?
Unbelievable, and actually really unbelievable, because that's when I found out who my biological father was.
Sure.
For the first time,
Do they have your blood type?
Yes. She's actually.
My goodness!
It comes into focus because my mother. I found out. See, I never knew my nationality. Here, I'm Seneca Indian, which is the remnants of the mound builders. See how it all.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, I'm fourth generation Seneca Indian on my mother's side, and obviously Eric Clapton comes from English royalty, right? Matter of fact, I think he might even be a lord now over there. But that's when I found out Eric Clapton is my biological father. So that, for the first time, is being revealed in.
Is that right?
Bill Burns' book, because he was the one. He was right there when all this information. People think I'm making this shit up. I'm like, right. I couldn't make this up if I tried.
This is fascinating. So, is there anything in the public right now that has at all in the tabloids that have?
No, I've never really released it.
Have you been in touch with Eric at all?
Never. I don't know how to get a hold of him. To me, this is very recent information. I honestly have just about as good of idea as anyone else out there. I don't know how to contact him.
Now, is this what your biological mother is telling you?
Yeah.
Okay.
With the facts and things that to back it up to the point.
So does that mean Eric Clapton has this type of blood? Ooh.
I would think so. We'll just leave it at
that. Well, maybe he doesn't want anyone to know that.
Well, he told her, he said, he was a blue blood, which,
Oh, gotcha. I gotcha.
Yeah. But I'll tell you what, he was an Illuminati fighter. You can look into this. Look into another article at West Penray. In the early 70s, Eric Clapton and Carlos Santana actually joined a group that they were like trying to stop.
Carlos, you said Eric Clapton and who?
You believe Santana.
Santana.
Yes, and West Penray has done an article with, I can't remember the woman's name, but she's a pretty famous individual herself, and they said that they've got a lot of people in the industry that are, and it's interesting. Some of these people are the people who have tried to make sure that album prices weren't too much, and they're looking out for the masses. So
us,
yeah.
And so you were saying, and it cut out. That's why I'm kind of clipping back here. Eric Clapton and Carlos Santana were involved in an Illuminati fight. You said,
like an organization that was created to try and. It wasn't a fight in the sense of they went to war. It was like a resistance movement.
Oh, okay. Isn't that interesting? For good. So interesting. And then, well, good luck with meeting, hopefully, with Eric.
I would love to. I mean, it's a strange subject for me because my parents that raised me, I love them dearly, and we are very close. And they were very honest with me right away. That that I was adopted, and I never had a problem with it. They are absolutely wonderful parents. But during my life, my dad told me at one point, he said, your father is a famous person. He didn't seem to know exactly who he was, but he knew.
How did your adopted parents end up getting a hold of? How did they adopt you? What happened?
Well, according to my biological mother, her and I were not part of the Illuminati's plans for Eric. Eric was in Cream at the time, and what you'll find out, and this is all verifiable, that he came into a contact with a girl named, her last name was Gore. Her father was a bigwig in the Illuminati and the entertainment industry, and he was a lord in England, by the way. So they set up this plan to have Eric Clapton go solo out of Cream and had everything set up, and this lord in England's daughter was to be Eric Clapton's wife. You know how they have prearranged marriages? So imagine how all of a sudden Eric Clapton fallen in love with my biological mother, who was a go-go dancer at the time, and got the gig to go dance for Eric at a concert by Cream at the Sailors and Soldiers Hall in Pittsburgh at the time. And they intervened very, very strongly, and to the point where they showed her a woman who had been murdered and said, if you ever talk about any of this, this is what will happen to you, and we'll do it to every single person in your family. And they said, you are not who Eric Clapton is going to be with. You're some stripper, that's what I'm telling her. And they created a situation kind of like Eyes Wide Shut or whatever, that Tom Cruise movie, kind of weird.
Yeah. That's a great movie. It's a great example. From
what I understand, they did that, and they tricked both Eric and her, because she told me at that time, Eric told her he had one of these people from this organization was assigned to be his guardian, and he wasn't a kind person, and Eric actually attacked him with a knife. Pocket knife, and he would show my biological mother these scars on his body, going, you think he's a sweetheart, look what he did. It's because he was fighting back, so that's why I was given up for adoption, was they had put this wedge between them, and Eric went to her and said, I know you might not be able to forgive me for what's happened. If you can't, I will leave and you'll never see me again. But you just got to let me know. But if so, we'll go to England, and I don't care what they do to us. We'll live our lives out. But if you decide you can't forgive me, you got to give the child up for adoption, because he will never be safe, and you will never be safe as long as you got to give him up for adoption. So, according to my biological mother, that was why I was given up for adoption.
Mm-hmm. Understood. And your biological mother's name wouldn't happen to be Layla, would it?
No.
I'm joking.
Right.
So
wouldn't that be synchronicity?
Wouldn't it? Wouldn't that just be creepy? It'd be like, okay, we got to go now. But anyway, so yeah, what a wonderful story. And I hope, like I said, I hope it unfolds for you, and perhaps I get it. You're talking about an arranged marriage, and she was a go-go dancer and a stripper, and that wasn't the blue blood they wanted Eric hooking up with. So, did he end up marrying somebody else by any
He
chance?
actually got together with that girl that I'm talking about. It's in the history.
Okay.
Now
Okay.
that and she said that girl, he brought her to the hospital when I was being born, which really pissed her off, by the way.
Oh, wow.
I'll send you a link to that information.
I would like to know that. I think
We
that's
lived
very
together
cool.
for years, and it is known that this girl's father was a lord in England. So, but how I'm going to tell you this is, this is what my biological mother had told me. I was sitting here not too long ago when I was watching the biography channel, and they had an Eric Clapton biography going, and they went through that whole thing of how he got contacted and creamed by this bigwig from the entertainment industry in England.
Yes.
And he had went solo, and this guy managed him right off the bat, And so it was kind of real shock and realization to me. And just there's so many events like that are confirmation that I do believe it's true. I would love to meet him. I love my parents that raised me, so it's not really that big an issue, but I would love to jam guitar with them. You know what I'm saying?
There you go. Hey, like father, like son. So do you, by the way, speaking of that, I just must ask, do you have the, sort of anything like him? In other words, the way you play, music or your influences?
You want to know a great synchronicity? Do you know
Yes.
the Grammy award-winning guitarist Steve Vai?
Yes.
Well, Steve had a contest, a nationwide contest, and he picked me as the winner of that guitar contest. I got to meet him. They flew me out to a G3 show, and he gave me one of his guitars, which was a part of that contest. It was called the Steve Vai Ibanez Guitar Challenge. So what I'm telling you is I'm a musician, which, Steve Vai picking me as, it's just so surreal to me. But
Yes.
Can I tell you something that is one of the instances that I can tell you of, like, telepathy or whatever, it's precognitive? I
Yes.
had a vision beforehand, and I met Steve before I even learned of the contest. This one night I had the most lucid dream, and in it I was being led down a corridor with a guide, and it emptied out into a empty concert club. And we were standing on the side of the stage, and I looked up, and it was Steve Vai's band, and he was in the dance floor area or whatever you would call it, looking back, and he was going, I need a little high end on my guitar or whatever. And in my mind, in this vision, I'm like, oh my God, that's Steve Vai, So
Right.
he starts doing this song in this vision called There's a Train That's Leaving. And I remember it being very spiritual. And he kind of like levitated over to right in front of me where I was. And he said in this most divine voice, welcome aboard. And it woke me up.
Oh my gosh.
I woke up, I'm like, what the hell was that about, And I chalked it up to the weirdest dream I'd ever had and, didn't know what it meant. But the next day I had this nagging feeling that there was this synchronicity waiting for me at his website. And that I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if I went there and there was news he was working on a song called There's a Train That's Leaving or something. That would be weird, right? So I followed that intuition, and I went to Steve Vai's website. It's vi.com. The first thing I seen was this banner. It said, enter the Steve Vai Ibanez Guitar Challenge. The fur went up on the back of my neck. I knew I was going to win that concert before I even recorded a note. I just met him the night before, and he said, welcome aboard. You know what I mean?
Right.
And sure enough, I was picked as the winner of that contest. So when I went to meet Steve, I brought him a Seth book. And I said, I think you really like this. And I handed it to him, and he smiled, and he goes, I've read every Seth book, but don't get wrapped up into the messenger. There's still something higher. I said, right on, brother. So me and Steve have become friends, and he's one of the most enlightened, nicest individuals I've ever met. I was really, really nervous to meet him because he has such a reputation of being, this mad genius kind of.
Didn't Steve play a devil guitar player in a movie or something?
Yes, Crossroad.
Right?
Yeah.
Crossroad.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
That's a great
That was a long
movie.
time ago.
He just takes over that scene too.
He does, and he's spooky. He's spooky about it, and he's like the bad guy with the bad guitar. Isn't that interesting that he plays the part of the the devil or whatever it was.
A very interesting thing, though, he played the other part as well.
Yes, he did. Yes, and
awesome?
A lot of people didn't know that.
Yeah, they're like, wow, that Ralph Macchio can really play the guitar. No.
Right, I don't think so. Yeah, I forgot about that. Isn't it interesting? Yeah, wow, you bring up a lot of memories. Listen, we're going to be taking off here in a couple of minutes, so I want to mention also that you have the Michael Lee Hill Life Journal Diary, correct? Which is
recent.
Okay. And it's all about journal of the alien ET related events and such, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's available for free. That was I've never released all this stuff. What happened was, as these events were unfolding in my life, I began to use a message board to write down those events with as much detail as I could muster, and just as almost a diary, because I knew it would be there. So just very recently, I went back through all those threads and put all the information together, and I just decided, you know what, instead of, really not, even though doing interviews and stuff is cool, and like what I'm saying in the writing world, it's being interpreted through other people, which is cool too. I appreciate it, but I'm like, why not just put out my own words, exactly what happened, when it happened, in as much detail. So I've actually released that now, and I can't believe how many people are reading it. I think it's over 2,000 views now, and I just put it up a couple weeks ago, But just do Michael Lee Hill Journal. I think it'll come up on.
That's great. I'm sure that there are a lot of people where you come across very, very real and authentic and genuine, and your message is just fabulous. I mean, I really look forward, Michael, to having you back on the show again. We can go down other rabbit holes and talk about. There's so much to talk about with you, but this is the first time you've been on the show, so we kind of covered the gamut. And then, of course, we'll certainly want to have you visit us again, and we can go down, rabbit holes together, go on a journey and talk about some of the, more, all the powerful, stuff that's happened. And of course, you're always moving and shaking. So you're always going to have something new for us. I think it's profound. Your experiences. They are absolutely profound. I'm glad that you are public and reaching out to the public, because I bet you get a lot of people contacting you.
More so recently, it seems to be snowballing, and I love talking about the subject, especially it's nice to talk about some of the more spiritual ramifications, which we got into tonight. I just kind of gauge how much of that stuff I get into by what kind of questions I'm being asked, so it was really wonderful talking with you, Roxy.
Oh, you betcha. And listen, anybody who's looking for more information on Michael, you can always find it at thetruthttonight.com. He will always be linked up there. And of course, you can go to the schedule page and search. And Michael, this show will be covered on that page for the future as well on our schedule page. So it'll just stay up there indefinitely. And, anyone that's looking for Michael, it's Michael Hill. Actually, it's michaelleehill.com, but again, that's right on the front page of the truthtonight.com. Yes, any last words? Because what's that?
Yeah, that's a brand new website that I'm really excited about.
I think it's great. I took a look at it. Look.
Right on. So I'm excited to start filling it up with some content, but there's a lot there right now. Last comments, I would say don't go into fear over the subject. I think once you realize that these beings have been part of human history, provable, if they meant us harm, we wouldn't be talking right now.
Nighthawk works around the clock and has for over 2.5 years, and has really brought this radio station up to the top. I don't know if you know it, but we are the #1 internet radio station that does not commercial free. We're commercial free. So we also want to thank those of you who keep us going, those of you who have been donating to Revolution Radio, and those of you who have been subscribing to the archives. We appreciate what you're doing to keep us on the air, telling the truth, speaking the truth, and bringing you programs like the one we're bringing tonight. So I want to just say thanks so much and big hugs to all of you for caring. There are a lot of people in the world right now who aren't quite there. So you're awake if you're here, and I just want to thank you. So thumbs up to everyone who's listening and those of you who are participating in the chat room. Without any further ado, let me introduce my guest. And first, quoting from Michael, he says, imagine this, if you will. You experience strange ET contact and happenings your entire life. They begin to communicate through telepathy, leading you to a cosmic spiritual truth regarding how thought creates reality, subject matter. They begin to reveal themselves in the physical, in orbs of light and plasma over Lake Erie. They allow you to film them. Your footage goes viral, gaining worldwide attention. Your footage lands you on a primetime TV show called UFO Hunters on the History Channel. On the episode, they decide to test your blood, and it is revealed you do not have normal human blood, a very rare blood anomaly bloodline that the world's best military and civilian doctors are at a loss to explain. The host of the show, legendary UFO researcher Bill Burns, goes on to say, I've got a funny feeling that you are being recruited and that there is a branch of the government that you're being recruited for. That somehow, some way you are a hybrid between ET and humans. And they are giving you a course of study, preparing you to meet your ET higher self. This is fascinating, folks.
Revolution Radio proudly presents live from Phoenix, Arizona, the Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here for topics you won't hear about on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, nutrition, and conspiracy facts regarding your personal sovereignty.
And a very good evening to all of you. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be a fabulous show. I know a lot of you are very interested to hear Michael Lee Hill's story as well. I am loving being able to hear the account from himself as opposed to a lot of stuff that I've read about him. And so this will be great. Anyone in the chat room, welcome to the show, by the way, chat room. And if you have questions, let's just give it the first hour if we can. And second hour, go ahead and post those questions into the chat room. And our lovely producer, Thomas, will pick up those questions for our guests this evening. One quick thing before we get on. I want to thank so many of you for your participation in some great healing that has been happening. As you well know, I'm not going to get into it. I don't want to take up time on this show this evening, but we've been in crisis mode over here on just so many levels. I can't even begin to tell you the story or the stories. But I will say this, coming from all levels, spiritual levels, just normal, everyday work, our animals, our whole life has been a big roller coaster for the past 4 months and really crescendoed a couple of days ago. And it's just been an enormous lesson. So I want to thank all of you who participated in prayer groups. I didn't even have to tell you what was going on. We just asked for help. And your help was received. We are always willing. And let me tell you, I really want to get this point across. So if you can just listen very carefully for just a moment. There are people on this planet right now who are the frontline individuals, like my guest, having experiences, who are sharing those experiences with the world. And let me tell you something. Some of you do not believe in the idea of saving a life. And I want to tell you something. I want to share with you. That is a lie. You can save a life. I am not talking about, when you stand by and watch something occur, a neighbor, a friend, a family member, an animal that's being abused, and you say to yourself, well, I don't have enough time, someone else will do it. No, that's not true. The movie's being played right in front of your eyes for a reason. We all have the opportunity to save a life. And we should, because this is part of the way in which we are going to unify as a planet, which has already begun. And humanity's got to stick together, and we have to look out for one another. Saving a life could be as simple. Here's a quick one for you. There was a man who was really down and out. He was standing on a street corner in New York City, true story. And he was going to step out in front of a bus. He had lost his home, lost his family, lost his kids, lost his job, and he couldn't take it. And he was going to step out in front of the bus and kill himself. And a woman just happened to be walking by and noticed him sort of wavering on the street corner, teeter-tottering, I guess. And she put her hand on his shoulder and she smiled. She didn't say anything. She just smiled. And he turned around and he looked at her and he smiled back. And the long version, how it ends up, is that she saved his life that day. It was the first time somebody had looked at him with non-judgmental eyes in a very long time. And that smile resonated through his whole body, and it gave him hope that he was just temporarily insane for wanting to step out of off that street corner and get hit by a bus. And he later tracked this woman down. It took him years, as a matter of fact. He tracked her down to tell her that she saved his life that day. And the woman didn't even know it. She just put his hand on his shoulder, and she smiled. And then she kept walking. So we can save lives. And I would like you just to consider that. Look at your life, look at your arena, look at your workspace, anything, and those around you, and animals, people alike. Look around you, because there is always someone who needs us. There's always someone there that just needs, like the woman did, just a smile can change somebody's entire life, or day, or moment. So I'd like you to consider that, and I want to say I am honored to have saved some of the lives this past few months that I've been a part of. I am honored. I have no words for it. The amount of love that I feel in my heart back when I see these lives changed for the better. So I want to thank all of you who participate in some of these prayer circles that I throw up there every now and then on Facebook, because a lot of you have shown up and really given of yourselves, and I just really appreciate you. So thank you so much. And I just want to say quick about Revolution Radio. Revolution Radio is all about volunteers. All of the hosts on Revolution Radio bring you programming, good programming to enlighten, and whatever it is, conspiracy, what have you. And all of the hosts, all 52 I believe we have now, are volunteers, as well as all of our producers, all the way up to the top, who is the owner, Hawk, Nighthawk. Really fascinating. Soon after the airing of this show, he was contacted by a branch of the government and offered a course of study. And then he was met by beings claiming to be ETs themselves. And these beings announced themselves as the Anunnaki. Where have we heard this before? Which is a term at that point in time that Michael didn't even know the meaning of. These Anunnaki, tell you that you yourself are an Anunnaki incarnated into the Nephilim, quote-unquote, royal human Anunnaki hybrid bloodline. And then this secret branch of the government begins to inform and guide you to information that makes sense out of all of this. Is this not fascinating, folks? This evening, Michael, who is a musician, a filmographer, and of course a UFO experiencer, will be joining us to talk about some of the events that have occurred in his life in more detail. And he's going to share with us what it means and how his life has changed with this knowingness that he now has. So without any further ado, welcome to the show, Michael Lee Hill. Michael, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Roxy. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Michael, your story is fabulous, and I just want to thank you for your bravery, because it takes courage to tell your story all over the world. But as we can see, when you told your story, people listened. So let's start with how are you living in this world as a musician and a filmographer and a UFO experiencer? I mean, wow, and knowing all of this about your bloodline, and what kind of experience are you having?
Well, it's been quite a ride, because just back shortly, 2008, I didn't know who the Anunnaki were. I